In this video, I am going to do a deep dive on Utah as they are currently paying plus 950 to win the championship. In case you have forgotten, Utah was ever so close in taking out LSU in the tournament as they were up on the Tigers by 1 point with 15 seconds left and had free throws to potentially win the game. Now, prior to the game, I was on the record that Utah would get crushed in this game as they would not be able to compete with the more athletic LSU and that Reese would dominate Pili with her length. But I was wrong. It was the refs that dominated both of them, and overall, they played to a bit of a push, both teams making runs when the other player was off the court and in foul trouble. But this led to a more deep dive on how Utah turned their program around and became competitive. And in short, this is basically a Moneyball story, which I found really interesting. Before we start, if you like this content in this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and giving the video a like when you get to the end. If you are not aware, Utah is coached by Lynn Roberts, who was hired by Utah in 2015. Utah had struggled, but on paper, this hire looked like the perfect fit as Roberts had a history of success of building programs, taking Chico State to the Division II Final Four before moving to the University of Pacific, where she transformed that program from an 8-win team in her first season into a program that produced a 27-8 record and a Big West Conference championship 7 years later. The facilities over her tenure improved, but the program could not get big-time success as it seemed their ceiling was the NIT, which they went to 3 times. In 2018, the Utes had a brief taste of success as they started the season 18-1 and shot up to the number 14 ranking in the national polls. But other than that, there were no NCAA tournament appearances and no winning records in the Pac-12. Even after the 18-win start, the Utes only managed just 21 wins over the next 2 years, and any momentum built in that period vanished. Then the bottom dropped out in the 2020-21 COVID year, where they were only able to win 5 games. In the offseason, Roberts reflected on her 91-87 record and 3 NIT appearances over the 7 years at Utah and knew it was not enough. She also received phone calls from coaches Kelly Graves at Oregon, UCLA's Corey Close, and Stanford's Tara Vandermeer, all offering support and guidance after the Utes' 4-15 Pac-12 season. Roberts knew the truth. When the calls start coming in bunches, your back is usually against the wall in this profession. This led to reflection, and she said, "I had a come to Jesus meeting with myself, like get it together, figure it out, and just dig deep." She knew she could get solid players, but she was not going to out-recruit Stanford, so she describes herself as a nerd, and she went full-on nerd, channeling her inner Daryl Morey, studying winning teams in college and Europe to help her determine what was important. She came up with a plan to focus on shot selection, turnovers, and rebounds. She hired an analytics person to help her develop what they would be focusing on in the upcoming season, with the biggest focus being on shot selection. Essentially, shots from 7 feet in are good, as well as shots at the rim and three-point shots, but avoid taking long twos like the plague, or as she termed it, death shots. She had a map showing the players the death shot zones, and these were called out with an air horn at practice when a death shot was taken, and good shots were celebrated with a cowbell. As well, another focus was making sure all players would take daily threes and get up as many shots as possible. Neekums, for example, ensures that she gets up 500 threes per day. Roberts also changed the stats that players looked at after games. Instead of the traditional box score, Utah developed what they called a smart box, which is stats that lead to winning basketball. Instead of just assists, they tracked good passes, i.e., if you made the right pass, you got a tick. As well, they tracked the 50-50 loose balls and long rebounds. All the little things that lead to winning, they were tracking. Combine this style of play with the signing of what Roberts termed as a talented duo from Minnesota, which was top 50 recruit Jenna Johnson and Gianna Neepkins, the Gatorade Player of the Year in Minnesota. As well, they already had Kennedy McQueen, the hometown Utah girl, who was a deadly shooter as well. You put this all together with the new playing style, and they built the next year after the COVID year, culminating in winning the Pac-12 tournament and qualifying for the NCAA tournament, where they won their first game against Arkansas and then lost in the second one versus Texas, but they were in Texas, as that was the Final Four, where all the teams played together in the one location. Then in that offseason, they were able to build on their success as they went after Alissa Pili in the portal, who had stagnated at USC. Morris sold her on coming to Utah to develop her game, as Utah's offense would allow her not only to bang inside, but also encourage her to go on the perimeter and shoot from outside, which she would need to do if she was intent to going to the next level in the WNBA. Roberts was honest with Pili, saying that she would need to get in shape if she wanted to play in the Utah offense, and Pili dedicated herself to getting in shape with Utah's conditioning coaches, and that was the extra piece Utah needed to take the next step. Morris thought early on during practice she might have a special team, but this was confirmed in her mind when they played Ole Miss in an early season battle, which was a no-holds-barred contest, which they won. Now, if this was Hoosiers, this is where we do the montage. Utah was simply awesome from then on, as Pili, Neepkins, Johnson, and McQueen all scored in double digits. The Utes were the fifth highest scoring team in the nation with 84 points per game. Their average scoring margin was like 22 points per game, and they were sinking 8 three-pointers per game. The accolades continued as Utah claimed its first Pac-12 regular season title by taking down Stanford at home and a record crowd of 9,000 to become co-Pac-12 champions. Pili was named Pac-12 Player of the Year, the first Ute ever to earn that honor. Roberts was named Pac-12 Coach of the Year, and they qualified for the NCAA tournament as a number 2 seed. And then they faced big bad LSU, who stood in their way to make the Elite Eight. Now, this is the part of the story where I go Shawshank Redemption. Remember when Red tells us a story about how Andy was fighting off the sisters and how it doesn't have a happy ending always? Well, sports is often cruel as well. The Utes were set to upset LSU as they fought to a 1-point lead. They grabbed a loose rebound, but then it slipped out of their hands, and Alexis Morris got the ball and got fouled. And with ice in her veins, she hit both free throws to put LSU up by 1. Then Jenna Johnson, a 75% free throw shooter, had a chance with 4 seconds left to tie and go in front with a pair of free throws, and you could see the pressure on her. It was painful to watch. She airballed the first, missed the second, and Utah went on to lose. There were tears on the bench, and suddenly Cinderella's season was over with a thud. The loss made more difficult as LSU went on to the next round and beat Miami in a basic rock fight where neither team could hit an outside shot to make it to the Final Four. I have no doubt Utah feels like they would have crushed Miami, but that is the cruelty of sport. But back to the original question of if their value at plus 950, I think so, as they return all of their starters as well. Roberts was talking to Howard Megdadal during the season about how her team reacted the first time they went to the tournament and lost. She went there to the locker room expecting to console her team and was a little bit annoyed that they didn't want to be cheered up because they were pissed off about losing.
I went into the locker room to try to kind of talk to the team and pump them up and, give them a little perspective on what we'd achieved being so young and blah, blah, blah. And they were having none of it. And they looked like their dogs had died and the world was coming to an end. They were they were pissed off, for lack of a better.
Mhm.
And, you know, I walked out of there feeling a little dejected because I couldn't motivate them as a coach. You know, it's like, come on, guys. You know, the ego of like, come on, you're not even going to give me a head nod. But also more so walking out of there thinking, wow, that's good. These guys, their heads are in the right place. And, so yeah, it was just kind of, it was time. Like, let's stop talking about it, hoping about it. Let's start doing it.
I assume they will take that same sort of mentality after the loss to LSU, and they could come back a very energized and ready team, much like the San Antonio Spurs, where they gacked up their loss to the Miami Heat, and the next year they were a team on a mission. You could see that with Utah as well. It will be fun to watch. Let me know what you think. Do you think Utah is value at plus 950? Can you see them winning the championship over the big boys like UConn and LSU, or do you just think they are a step below? Again, thanks a lot for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy this content.